with demand expected to come back, the question remains, does this mean the economy is back on track?
Companies now, after experimenting with offshore in places like India, Philippines, and Poland, want to bring those jobs back.
We invest in the U.S. We're the biggest exporter in the country. In the cycle we're in right now, we're creating jobs.
From Radio America, it's Neil Asbury's Made in America, the show that explores American industry, large and small, and promotes American-made products everywhere. Put Neil Asbury's Made in America to work for you.
A very big welcome to you today. I'm your host, Neil Asbury, together with co-host Dr. Rich Ruffin. So, Rich, I've been really sort of glued in watching, all the various news reports coming out about Democrats, or I should say the progressives, $3.5 trillion reconciliation bill, which is essentially creating America, turning America into something that it was never created to be, a socialist state. I mean, we should be rewarding people to work. This will do everything to reward people not to work. I mean, the handouts is absolutely amazing. And by the way, this has been dumbed down from originally $6 trillion, Rich. And so they think that they're being very fiscally responsible by coming up with $3.5 trillion. But we're talking about like totally changing the American economy. I mean, look this is the Green New Deal. I mean, what are they going to do to the energy industry? What are they going to do to the higher education in this country? What are they doing just right across the board? I mean, people are going to be paid to stay at home. Crazy stuff, Rich.
Yeah, well, first of all, I don't think it's $3.5 trillion. We know that. There's an infrastructure bill that's saddled into it. That's $1 trillion, a little bit more. And then it's been scored and looked at, and it's really more like $5 to $6 trillion. And if Kudlow says it, it's true. But that's the fact. So it's a lot more money than we're hearing about right now. But I think the thing that bothers me the most about all of this, and there are so many things that bother me about this, is that the whole concept of the American work ethic. I mean, that's one of the things that separated us from so many other countries in the world, that we had a society that's free market, that you can grow and dream and do and function, that we had a country of laws and rules, so we had the ability to believe in ourselves and do anything we want. And that's all part of, well, when we were kids studying, the Puritan work ethic, which kind of moved forward over the generations and generations and became the American work ethic. We were the can-do country. Now we're the handout country, if this goes through. And the mental change in America, to me, is enormously frightening. So there are lots of reasons why I hate what's happening. That's one of them.
Well, let's talk about this and taxes and it's going to add zero. It's all going to be the rich are going to pay for it. Or it's going
to cost us nothing.
It's going to cost us nothing.
Everyone's saying it.
Free college and more health care and Medicare
and Green New Deal
and get rid of the fossil fuel industry.
Yeah,
but it's not going to cost you anything. What a bunch of nonsense. Let's bring on a good friend of the show right now, Grover Norquist, who is the founder and president of Americans for Tax Reform. Grover, welcome to Made in America.
Absolutely. Good to be with you. And you're right that it's $3.5 trillion only because there's $1 trillion plus of Green New Deal / some infrastructure that was passed in a separate bill. And because the $3.5 trillion is really $5 trillion. If everything in it was passed for 10 years, it'd be $5 trillion. They have a couple of them end at 2 years, 7 years, 6 years, in order to make it seem like less. But their goal is to get so many people on the take, drugged, and in the sense of being made dependent on government. Somebody does something for you for free for 5 years. The idea that you might have to go to work might bring you to the polls to say, oh, no, I'm not doing this work thing anymore. And so I think you would see the $3.5 trillion turn largely into a $5 trillion spending spree, which would dramatically increase the total burden of government to make us look much more like a European country where kids don't start work until they're almost 30. They spend all this time in school. They wait for the job that pays a great deal of money because they can do fine on welfare. And of course, waiting for that kind of job takes you years not working and losing the work ethic.
Well, you know what it reminds me of very, very much? When I used to watch these British films back in the 70s, and you would see in these films that, they would present the situation what's going on in England, whatever the film was. But they'd always say somewhere, hey, is your dad on the dole? Or is your family on the dole? And it became rampant. And it was just the norm. And the norm was that, hey, I'm not going to work, I'm not going to function, society's not working really well for me, and I'm on the dole. And I think that is such a pervasive mental cancer for our country that we opened up a door, as Kudlow says, save America, kill the bill, that if we don't do something now and we don't draw that red line right now, and the GOP doesn't stay together, and Manchin doesn't cave on the other side, and Sinema doesn't cave, Grover, you know better than anybody in this country right now that we're going to go down such a slippery slope that we don't even recognize America.
The good news is that we've done this twice before. The Democrats spent too much in the first 2 years of Clinton, and in 1994 the Republicans swept the House and the Senate. He picked up 54 seats in the House and 8 in the Senate. Then when Obama came in and he just knew that he was going to run the world forever, 2 years later in 2010, the Republicans picked up 63 seats in the House and 6 seats in the Senate. So you can swing back, and we will. But you know what? You have to have the presidency, the House, and the Senate to undo this damage. So you have to take the Senate as well as the House, and you have to wait 4 years till 24 to where you have a shot at the presidency. So they could get wiped out in the next election and still have their little programs continue and dig in to where people become dependent on them.
So Grover, can you give us your insight to, counting the numbers on Capitol Hill right now? I mean, I guess it's really all coming down to one vote or 2 votes in the Senate, right? And Senator Manchin, I guess this memo was released, what his position was, a couple of months ago, and saying that he would support $1.5 trillion, but it can't do these things and all these things, other things, he needs to happen. So he's kind of put his line in the sand. Then you got Sinema that, she's,
Sinema.
I think she's really said what she wants or stands for, other than she doesn't like it. So does this come together?
She's gone so far as to say no corporate income tax, no cap gains income tax. She's much more radical than Manchin. In her, you cannot do this. Now, she wouldn't mind a tax on carbon, but that would destroy West Virginia, so that's off the table. What helps us is they need 2 votes they don't have now, Sinema and Manchin. And those are 2 very different people. It's not like you can do one thing and buy both their votes, or make one change and get them both to agree. She's at the beginning of her career. She's at the end of his. He's in a state that's completely red. She's in a purple state. And, they have completely different needs in terms of what they would want to agree to something. I mean, I don't think any of them would go much more than $1.5 trillion, which is too much, okay? We don't need to do any. But $1.5 trillion is a lot less destructive than 3.5, read $5 trillion.
Well, we already know that this week before the vote that Manchin had already said just what you had indicated, the 2 of you, that he could go to 1.5 trillion. So he thought, as long as it has fill in the blocks, where are you going to go? The progressives, on the other hand, they came from 3.5 down to 2.5. So they say. And that was out there before the votes as well. And so it looks like to me that the progressives are not going to sign on to this if it gets much lower. And if Manchin's at 1.5, and he's probably fishing, but if, let's say, it goes to 2 or 1.8, look, the point is there are so many orbs running around in the universe right now. Do they ever come together? Is it possible, do you think, that the far left radical progressives will accept a compromise from Manchin and Sinema, along with, well, we know the GOP is going to sit out on this one. What do you think on that?
That's the fight. That is the fight. They could not agree and get nothing. It's like one of those prisoner's dilemmas, right? I mean, you think 1.5 trillion would make them pretty happy, but the taste of 5 trillion, and they've decided that they really don't care about the quote unquote real infrastructure bill, although that's mostly Green New Deal. if either or both of these go down, it's a terrible problem for the left and for their spending sprees. It's just ridiculous. So I tend to think at some point someone will say, quit, how much can we put on the table? Give us a number, Manchin, Sinema, and we'll take that. The challenge, of course, is the way the left wants to spend it. Pardon?
No, yeah, go ahead.
Spend different things, but than Manchin and Sinema might. And so it's not even a question of how much, it's how do you spend it? Because Manchin kind of likes roads.
Kind of like, and he definitely likes coal mines. You know, I know my family's from West Virginia, so I know exactly what his state is all about. Grover, very, very great to have you with us. Thanks for coming on the show. Very insightful. Grover Norquist, president and founder of Americans for Tax Reform. Thanks for being with us,
Thank
Grover.
you.
Coming up, Dr. Rothman and I still have a lot more to cover.
Made in America.
Welcome to Made in America. I'm your host, Neil Asbury, together with co-host Dr. Rich Rothman. So, Rich, Grover, you know, he summed it up pretty well. I mean, this is going to be a very, very fascinating thing as we watch what's going on with this reconciliation bill. You know, I just pray that somehow it just blows up and it doesn't go anywhere because the sides are too far apart. But look, the Democrats, if they have a $1.5 trillion to spend, or if they got $3.5 trillion to spend, they'll spend it, and they'll find ways to flush it down the Potomac and get absolutely nothing for it. That's what they do, and so I think they'll all come around. And Joe Manchin I wish he would just change his party affiliation, become a Republican. If he can't do that, at least become an independent. But he probably won't do that either, and he'll probably come up, you know, in the spirit of compromise to some number, and the Democrats will get a huge windfall for all of their boondoggles. It's just kind of my prediction. But you know, we've had a lot of fascinating people on our show. I mean, we just recently had Metallica, and a spokesperson for the rock band Metallica, and how they're doing all of this wonderful work for community colleges and raising all kinds of money to send people to learn trades in trade schools that are connected with community colleges. We had the folks from the band Jethro Tull, Ian Anderson, the flautist, who's working with American veterans and wounded warriors to help provide them jobs and opportunity. And this was at the beginning of the pandemic. And so he's funding an operation so that they can do hand sanitizers, you know, and in fact, I went online and bought a couple of cases of it and to support them. But there's a lot of really fascinating people out there that's involved that you wouldn't think was involved in helping Americans. So, Rich, would you like to introduce our next guest? I think you know him very, very well.
Well, I think it's interesting that we're talking about this, and Les, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Neil.
As you're pointing out to everybody that right now there's a lot of foundation work being done, which means people are donating money, and one of the things that people really have to understand is there are ways that you can, give money that are beneficial both to yourself and to those who are getting the money. And I think Les has found, along with Wanda, has found Wanda Miles, a very, very interesting way to meet some of the challenges and some of the problems that you have when you try to give money to people. Because undoubtedly, the government gets in the way. They're probably your biggest impediment. So, Les.
Yeah, the government is the biggest impediment.
Yeah, it would seem to me, and you seem to have found a solution, and you're doing something good. So then when all these other groups like Metallica's Foundation, which, by the way, since 2017 has given away $6 million. So that's not some silly money. That's some good money. And
that's very admirable. And, of course, one of the things that we want to do is to endow America using the system that the government actually gave us 50 years ago that very few people know about. Congress in their infinite wisdom, in 1969, passed a section of the tax code, Section 664, which most people don't know exists. And in that section, they made a bargain with the taxpayer that said, if you do something good for charity when you pass, we'll give you lower taxes while you're alive. And that bargain is probably not known to 99% of the people in the country, and nobody is using that section of the tax code. They gave us Section 401k. Everybody knows what a 401k is. It's my retirement plan. How do you know that? What is it? Most people don't even know it comes from the tax code, but it's a section of the tax code that's been promoted. 529 for college has been promoted. So we're trying to get the focus of the public onto a section that really is beneficial to them in their planning for their own personal well-being, their family's well-being, and then at the end of the day, it'll go to help who they direct it to, the community.
So let me ask you this. We don't have a heck of a lot of time left. How are you getting the word out? It seems like you've come up with a really, really good idea with Route 664 radio. Right. Can you give us a little bit on that?
664. We're tying it to the charity idea, the idea of philanthropy, and we're also encouraging people to become philanthropic advisors, professional philanthropic advisors. There are advisors out there right now, lawyers, accountants, insurance people, CFPs. They're good at what they do, but they need to understand how to use these social charity devices in their planning with their clients, so that their clients can really improve their income, pay less taxes, and do something great for the community. So we've created Route 664 Radio, which is a digital radio station. You can reach it at route664.org/radio, route664.org/radio, or you can go to the socialcharity.org website. We want you to become familiar with Section 664, just like you know what a 401k is, or 529, and we can help to turn this whole thing around over a long period of time, but you got to start somewhere. The trip of 1,000 miles starts with the first step. So this is what we believe to be the first step. Learn about Section 664. Find a financial advisor that knows how to use that section and how to use those parts of the tax code to your benefit, and we can help change America from a country $30 trillion in debt to a country endowed with $30 trillion in the NGO area.
Hey, Les, thanks for being on the show. Unfortunately, we're out of time. But, folks, we've just been together with Les Winston. He's the president and chairman of Endow America Network Foundation. Les, thanks for being on the show.
Thank you.
Coming up, Dr. Rothman and I still have a lot more to talk about. Stay with us.
Made in America.
Sharply higher at the open, stocks continued to perform well over the course of the day Tuesday.
And I think that bodes well here over the next couple of years for having bigger demands coming to this country.
Now, more of Neil Asbury's Made in America.
A very big welcome to you today. I'm your host, Neil Asbury, together with co-host Dr. Rich Rothman. Rich, I mean, this chip problem with the automobile industry is absolutely amazing. You know, I mean, used cars right now going for record prices. I never bought a car off a lease before, but I had a car coming off a lease. And by buying the car, I made $18,000 by buying it and what the market price for that car was. I never seen a lease to where you were in the money. And right now, because of the price of cars, I'm in the money. I went to a car dealership because I was thinking about giving up the car, and everything in the showroom was used cars. They didn't have any new cars to sell.
Yeah. Well, ironically, my son, my 31-year-old, just got another car the other day, just within 48 hours. And why? Because he brought his car into service, which was only about, 2.5 years old. And we bought like 10 cars from this one dealership for him and his wife. And they said, listen, I know you're here for tires. He went in for tires. He went out with a car because they bought his car for more value than the car, right? It's better than Kelley Blue Book. Usually you have to fight for that. But no, they bought the car. Philip walked out. 2 hours later, they had a brand new car, better car, bigger car, all the stuff you wanted to have on the car. It's great, but it's a major, major problem. And I'm delighted we have our next guest on the show, because if you pass car lots right now, they got 5 cars. They have 5 cars, 4 cars. They have nothing to sell.
Well, the problem is that they're making cars, but they don't have the chips to put in the cars.
And it's more insidious than just saying they don't have cars. And we're going to talk about this in a second with our guest, because they have options that they can't offer. So we're going to go into all of this.
Well, Rich, we have Lauren Fix with us right now, who's an automotive expert and analyst. Lauren, welcome to Made in America.
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate it. This is a really huge subject, and it's actually been good for the dealers and really bad for consumers, unfortunately.
Yeah, and that's right, Lauren, because when I was at the dealership, they told me that they're making more money than they ever have. Despite not having cars, they make a lot more money selling these used cars right now than they do making new cars. And I get it. Let's listen to the head of Porsche. He had a comment this last week about what's happening there and how long you're going to wait to get a Porsche. Let's listen.
We set a new record in the first half of the year with our sales figures, and our order intakes are on an all-time high. But volume hasn't never been the biggest driver for Porsche. Volume for us is more the consequence of a very positive product strategy, and that's what we are mentioning currently in the markets.
How long do people need to wait for if they order a new Porsche right now?
We have the situation of the semiconductors, and therefore the waiting time is longer than normal, and depends on each segment. But it could be that the customer waits half a year or a bit more.
Well, Lauren, I mean, that's incredible. There's no more walking into the dealership and walking out with a car, at least a new car these days. So what's going on with this chip problem?
Well, first off, the chip problem is partly political and partly manufacturing mistakes. So while COVID was happening, all the production lines shut down. So purchasing people were told, put a stop on all this product coming in, whether it be tires or metal or wiring harnesses, whatever it was to build a vehicle. Let's not have all this product coming in, because they work on what's called JIT, or just-in-time inventory. So if the inventory arrives and they don't need it, it sits in the warehouse, it costs them money, and no one knew how long the shutdown would be. Is it 2 weeks? Was it 10 months? Nobody knew. So as production started to ramp back up slowly, no one knew if there'd be interest in vehicles. And sure enough, there was, and it was well more than what they expected. So now people were going to the lots. They were getting, anyone who bought somewhere around April or May of 2020, there was product to be chosen from. But then as they started producing more and the demand started to increase, and we all kind of figured out ways to work with that, there wasn't any product, because the purchasing people went back to, okay, we'll take our chips, we'll take our tires, our wiring, our steel. And they're like, oh, well, we used that material we were going to use for your chips, and they went to gaming consoles and televisions and iPads and computers and everything we used at home, because kids were learning from home, people were working from home, and we sort of made this, we all started like, I could use a TV. Let's get a new TV for the family room. So if you think about how many people started demanding all these electronics, a lot of that production, that materials shifted. Now, where do the materials come from, sort of, if you back it all out, is all of the ceramics come from the Netherlands, but all the metals come from China. Now, so China owns almost all the mines, and as of last month, they now own 2/3 of the chip manufacturing companies, because when Obama was in office, people started farming all of their content and all their production out to China because of the profit margins, and there was more money to be made. And that is a problem, because now that you need the product, China's like, well, great, you can lift those tariffs, and we'll be more than happy to give you more product. Well, that's where the politics come into it. So there's a little bit of that. Plus, on top of it, as we start to produce more products, and all the mines are now owned by China for all the metals, the rare earth minerals that we use in all these electric vehicles, China owns like 95% of the mines. So they're controlling the show. So we're no longer beholden to the Middle East. We're now officially beholden to China. So as people say, well, let's make a chip company. The three of us go, let's build a chip company. We're going to make $1 billion. It would take us 3 years from the time we had everything together to start producing it in order to produce an actual chip for sale. That's where the problem lies. And that is a big problem, because if you can't get product, you have to look elsewhere. So there is some product being made in Korea, but the Koreans just sold their company to China. So now we're waiting on Thailand, and they're still dealing with COVID and building a lot of product out in tents and outside in minimal production. So until there's a capture on what we can do, or we start revamping our plants here in the U.S., which would be smart to make it in America, like the name of your show, that would be the smartest choice. And we should have known about this, but I think people were thinking profit margin before they were thinking what if.
Well, Lauren, yeah, I mean, it's absolutely fascinating. Just like our pharmaceutical industry is all overseas, too, and we found out during COVID that was not a good thing. Hey, Lauren, we really appreciate you being on the show. Unfortunately, we're out of time, folks. We've just been with Lauren Fix. She's an automotive expert and analyst, and she certainly knows her stuff. Lauren, thanks for being on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Coming up, Dr. Rothman and I have a number of things, fascinating things that came up in the media this week that we want to share with you.
Made in America.
Welcome to Made in America. I'm your host, Neil Asbury, together with co-host Dr. Rich Rupp. So, Rich, Larry Kudlow has been on our show a couple of times. It was great when he joined us. And, of course, he's a great friend with Stephen Moore, who's also been on our show a number of times. Who, you know, the two of them were the economic advisors to President Trump, a lot of the Trump tax cuts, this you know, and I think what a lot of people misunderstand is that there's a lot of money coming into the country right now, or into the Treasury right now, because of the businesses that are thriving because of the tax cuts. They had more of their money they could invest. They invested in very positive things, and now that's generating more business. And of course, they're paying taxes on that, is the reason why we're collecting a lot of taxes right now. So even though you have a tax cut, sounds counterintuitive, you actually collect more tax dollars. Let's listen to Larry. He made a point. He's got a few points this week, but we're going to listen to the first one right now.
And I also want to add, the problem is the spending problem, not a tax problem. Latest data just came out. Federal tax revenues as a share of the economy, as a share of GDP, are now hitting 19.3%. That is virtually the highest since 1960.
So, Rich, I mean, that's a pretty astounding fact. You don't see that in the media anywhere, that they're talking about the tax Trump cuts and all this money, you know, going to the wealthy. There's more taxes being paid despite the tax cuts. And that's the reason we had the tax cuts.
Well, yeah, and it only gives rise to the veracity that that Trump was trying to get out there, which goes back to his first conversation that Kudlow and Moore wrote with him, with Art Laffer, at the New York Economics Club. That goes back when he was running to be president back in 2016. And that is lower the taxes, eliminate the regulations, free the economy, let it rise where it's going to rise in a very organic way. And you're going to make a lot more money. Everything's going to rise along with it. Wages are going to go up. Employment's going to go up. Tax rolls are, you know, the money coming in is going to go up. So what Mr. Kudlow is saying right now is exactly what they said years ago when they said, look, let it happen. Free it. Free the marketplace. And it's going to work. And that's exactly what we're seeing right now. But what I find interesting with all of this, and they want to have these great 3.5 trillion here and 1.5 trillion there, and if it goes out 5 years and 3.5 goes to 5.5 trillion, I mean, it's unbelievable. And what Larry's saying is that you don't need that. But what they're also saying on the left is that, hey, don't worry about it. It's going to cost us nothing because we're going to make the wealthy, we're going to make the corporations actually pay for it. After all, they should be paying their, and you all hear this, their fair share. So let's see what Larry has to say about the reality of what that fair share really is or isn't.
The top 1% pay 40% of the income taxes. They only earn 21% of the income. So they're doubling it. I would say that's paying their fair share. The top 10% pay 70% of the income taxes, and they only earn 50. So I'd say they're paying more than their fair share.
So again, you know, let's face it, that this tax cuts and what we're talking about here is many of who's going to get hurt with the tax increases that the Democrats are proposing is our small businesses and our entrepreneurs. I mean, that's who's going to take it on the chin here. And look, the reason that we're collecting all this money, the reason why there's so much economic activity in the market right now is that our entrepreneurial community, our small businesses, they're in the game. They're back in the game right now. They're keeping more of their money, but they're not keeping it and going out and buying, all these toys. They're investing it back in their businesses. They're increasing inventories. They're investing in technology. They're investing in manufacturing equipments, if they're into manufacturing. Whatever it is, whatever product or service they're offering, they're perfecting that. Yeah, that's the way you survive. You got to continue to stay one step ahead of your competitors. That's a big incentive to take your money and to continue to invest it in your business. Otherwise, you're not going to have a business. So I think that the disconnect here is that this money, these tax cuts are going to support our entrepreneurial and small business community, right? That's who's really benefiting. And that's why we see all of this economic activity right now and all these tax dollars coming back into the Treasury, Rich.
Well, yeah. I mean, the money will go into the country, which means going into new businesses, if the economic environment is correct to do that. I mean, that's what the bottom line is. Let's just make it as simple as possible. It's not very complicated. If it's advantageous for people to invest in the United States, to develop new products, technology, whatever it is, doesn't make any difference, widgets, then they're going to build it here. They're going to make it here. They're going to manufacture here. They're going to employ here. But the market environment and the economic environment, as the government looks at it, has to be encouraging and not discouraging. I mean, what are we saying to, entrepreneurs? We're saying, well, first of all, if you're very successful, that's not fair. That's not equity. So we're going to take more from you. And in some states, that can be with everything that you got, state, city, federal. You're going to give 60% of your income away to the federal government. So in effect, you're saying those who can will pay, and those who can't, well, don't worry about it. You're going to get the money anyway because we're going to give it to you, which goes back to what we discussed, earlier in the show. And that is, are we really discouraging the American work ethic? And exactly that's what happens. That's what happens. You can't discourage success. You shouldn't tax heavily success. You should encourage it so you have more success. What do you think?
Absolutely. And, and that's the American way. The American way is you reward work. You reward success. You reward the risk taker.
Well,
let's just listen to Larry. He just made one more comment here. This is really quick.
This sums it up.
You just go on. It's an endless process. All I can say is save America, kill the bill.
I mean,
that's the mantra right now.
Kill the bill. And obviously, he's talking about the $3.5 trillion, which really, according to Grover, is really more like $5.5 trillion. But anyway, we're out of time, but we're going to be right back. Still a lot more to share with you. Stay with us.
Made in America.
Welcome to Made in America. I'm your host, Neil Asbury, together with co-host Dr. Rich Rothman. So, Rich, I mean, this whole thing that our country's going through right now is especially emotional. This huge push to turn our country into something that it is not, a socialist welfare state. This is it's absolutely crazy. The Green New Deal. Again, this massive government takeover of everything in our lives, making our citizens essentially addicted to government welfare, government support, and that's how they guarantee to get elected, right? If people are addicted to government dollars and welfare, then they'll continue to vote for that. I mean, there is a reason for all of this. But Joy Behar, I know that you follow her very much. And
I try to watch every show possible and DVR the whole thing.
And you hang on every word.
Yeah.
But she had something very interesting to say. Yeah, and remember, folks, we live in a democracy, right? And people vote, and elections have consequences, and you vote for people, and they're going to represent you, and that's a democracy. It's called a democracy. So let's listen to her.
The Democrats have the numbers to make it happen. But Manchin and Sinema are standing in their way.
Especially Sinema.
They call themselves Democrats, and they will be the ruination of this nation. Those two. We cannot let this happen. Manchin and Sinema must be brought to task.
So is that where they hold the applause sign up?
Yeah.
And
they specialize in getting morons to come to that show. I mean, I didn't even understand what's going on the show because I can't understand. Joe Behar is a very mean-spirited person. She used to be a comedian, wasn't she?
She's just
she was a comedian. She ain't funny anymore.
But here's the deal: is that she says that the democracy and everything is if you listen to the whole thing, the whole American democracy is falling apart. Blah 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 blah. Well, these people were elected. They were elected. That's democracy, and they have constituents, and they're representing their constituents. Let's remember, Joe Manchin is from the state of West Virginia. So if the progressives, the crazies on the left, are saying, hey, Joe, I want you to just go and decimate everybody in West Virginia. So because you're a Democrat and because the progressives and the Democrats, we have this crazy plan that's going to just absolutely destroy folks in West Virginia. And just go along with us. He was elected to go to the Senate to represent the interests of the people from West Virginia.
Well, he doesn't work for the Democratic Party. He doesn't work for the progressives, and he sure as hell doesn't work for Joy Behar. And what you see out there now, and this is the pervasiveness of what's happening in the country, if you disagree with mainstream, if you disagree with the administration, if you disagree with those who are in power right now, you must be punished, and you will be punished. And what we're hearing when you listen to Joy Behar and the other morons on that show, and I'm sorry, but they're morons. If you listen to that, they're saying, get them, get them. They're not saying the right thing. Get them. They're a direct threat to democracy, when ironically, this is such a Democratic, mantra. Get the other guys, blame them for what you do. And the truth of the matter is, it's Joy Behar, those on the left, those who are the progressives, who are trying to rein in the rights that we have. Look what happened in the pandemic. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. And we are giving up our rights, and we are giving up our democracy, our republic. Anyway, we have a democratic republic. But that's what's really happening. And it's happening because of what those on the left are doing. Toe the line, or the line will destroy you.
Well, very, very good points. And so we're going to give the last word on this show, to kind of as a rebuttal or response to Joy Behar, to Senator John Thune from South Dakota. Listen.
That isn't the mandate they were given. These are the narrowest of majorities. And yet they're trying to do everything at 51 votes. So as long as they're going to do that, with unified control of the government, if they want to do all the spending and all the taxing at 51 votes, they should do all the borrowing at 51 votes. It's as simple as that. And there's no question about where Republicans are on this.
Well, we're going to give Senator Thune the last word, Rich, but that was a great rebuttal, right?
Summed it up. You want to do this? It's on you.
They don't have a majority. Very, very, very thin. And that's what happens. I mean, when you have an evenly divided government, you're not going to get these massive programs. And if they try to do it, they're going to own it. But fortunately, there's a couple of very brave senators standing in their way. And that's what we call democracy. Hey, Rich, unfortunately, we're out of time. But we're going to be back again next week for another adventure of Made in America, where we never stop fighting for your jobs.